Welcome to the crypto trading channel. My name is Stu. Well, guys, Bitcoin's seen a beautiful pump overnight as well as throughout the day today. But is this rally sustainable, or will we still end up hitting my 64K target? Nobody knows for sure, but let's dive into a few Bitcoin and altcoin charts to check some important levels on my radar, signs of strength, signs of weakness, and so on. And as always, if you do appreciate my daily market updates, be sure to smash that like button. And with that, let's hop right into the Bitcoin 4-hour chart to start things off. You guys know that I had taken a short at my 786 basically, but as I keep mentioning, and as I mentioned in my Telegram, basically last night when we had this last little dump here, I had mentioned to make sure if you are in some shorts to start taking profits basically, because we never know when the market is going to completely reverse and erase all of our gains. So I always like to take profits along the way. Obviously hit my first target front running the 0.5 Fibonacci there. As well as I had mentioned, I think it was around 71, 170 or something where I actually started taking profits. So I think it was right about there. I took a third. Here I took a third, and my remaining third is still running with a break-even stop. So we'll see what happens with that. If we hit my target of 64,044 US dollars, then I will be locking in half of the remainder of that position. So yeah, guys, I am not in any longs on Bitcoin or anything else other than maybe a couple of automated positions at this point. But yeah, I myself never took any longs. I'm totally okay with it. It's not that... not so much that I don't think we can go higher. We absolutely can. Just I am in some nice, comfortable positions. The fact that I still have this position running from 73,348, as well as my better position from 89,906. I still have both of those running. So at this point, I'm really not too concerned about catching every single move. That's a part of trading. You don't catch them all. So whatever. It is what it is. I'm still holding on to that short, hoping I hit my next target. But obviously, we will have to see what actually happens with that, as well as dive into some altcoins and check some of them out as well. But obviously not winning every single trade. In fact, earlier today, you guys, I mentioned on Ethereum that I was building a short position. I even laid it out in my Telegram exactly how I was looking to play it. Unfortunately, got stopped out on that position very quickly by setting a new higher high on the 5-minute. It is what it is for Ethereum. Not all trades are going to be profitable, obviously. A big part of trading is also managing those losses and having invalidations in place. So even if this ends up playing out now, because I am seeing some signs of weakness on my Oracle Pro indicator and so on, but it is what it is. Unfortunately, the exact same setup on Bitcoin would have played out. Just altcoins seem to be moving more aggressively. But guys, for those of you who are interested in seeing way more examples of how I'm viewing market structure, how I'm looking at some of my trade strategies, some of my setups, and just how I'm looking at market structure in general, do yourselves a favor and scan the QR code to gain access to my private Telegram, which will also grant you free unlimited access to algo trading bots due to our exclusive partnership with Prime Automation. But yeah, guys, so far looking at Bitcoin on the 4-hour here, we did end up reclaiming this block back here. I was talking about this in my last stream yesterday, actually, in fact. Just talking about the fact that we were respecting this block as a support resist flip, basically. If we end up losing it once again, I see no reason why we wouldn't end up targeting my 64K target, basically pushing a little bit lower, but we'll have to see. From here, if we do end up continuing to the upside, you guys, something we need to consider is I'm already seeing on social media that a lot of people are just basically very much so wanting to short a retest of this level if we get up here. You know, guys, as far and as bearish as I am, and as I'm known to be in the recent months, I'm actually not looking at retaking that setup if we get up there at that point. I would actually be aiming a little bit higher, just like I saw mentioned in the chat right before starting this. The 77K, I think 77.7 was actually what was mentioned, but basically 77K and above, because at this point, you guys know that when I'm looking at trade setups, when I'm looking at these STUBER fibs, typically speaking, I like to play the first test. That's why this one was so appealing to me, is just the fact that it was the first test of that resistance retest on the downtrend, right? We had our low, we had our lower low, we had our confirmed lower high at 77K, pulling a fib from our lower high on the trend down to our current range low. And that basically put our resistance pocket here, right? So on the first test, yes, absolutely. If we now end up going back up to these levels, although another rejection there would be possible, and if we saw, let's say some sort of structure like this where we do lose higher low on the trend, whether it's on the 4-hour or even a smaller time frame, and it's kind of lining up with that resistance retest, then I feel differently about it. And sure, I'm willing to take a stab at a scalp on something like that. However, if we just continue climbing, I'm not really interested in just setting blind limit orders at this point, because since this has already been tested once, if we're going to go up to these resistance levels for a retest, I would assume that we would actually push a little bit higher. Even if we don't break the downtrend, I just think at that point, it would make sense that we would test at least the 886, or even more likely, in my opinion, would be going for that swing fail territory, which basically lines up all the way to the daily confirmed trending lower high, which is at about 79.4K. So even if we end up pumping to the upside very nicely from here, don't get me wrong, there's obviously lots of opportunities if that does happen, but I just don't want to celebrate and think that that's bull market back on and that we need to go parabolic to all-time highs right away or anything like that. Obviously, anything is possible. But at this point, I still, as we approach retesting resistance in a 5-month downtrend, I want to make sure that I at least respect that resistance and don't turn a blind eye to it. So that's where I would start looking for those bearish setups on smaller time frames inside those resistance pockets, basically. So basically, if we end up getting rejected at the STUBER fib pocket once, then the next retest, I'm kind of looking for that swing fail territory for a little bit higher of a retest. So very possible that we do end up pushing up towards that 77K level while still remaining bearish on the trend. But we'll have to see. Obviously, there has been a lot of weakness with Bitcoin over the last several months. So it's very possible that, yeah, you know, even though we did end up breaking this little micro downtrend on the 4-hour, it's still very possible that we just end up basically losing momentum quickly and then just setting new lows. But as it stands right now, one thing that I will mention is another thing to look for, which may end up stopping us from hitting my next short target there, would be basically the fact that we did take out some of this microstructure like I was talking about. So technically, we may, even if we see a pullback, we might just be setting a micro STUBER fib, something like this, where, you know, we broke some of that structure, although it's obviously a smaller range inside the bigger range. But either way, we broke some microstructure there. So if we ended up pulling back to the 786, 886, there is potential support starting again at about 66.5K, basically. And that would run down to approximately 65K. The thing about that and why I'm not overly interested in that at this time, obviously, once again, if the lower time frames are agreeing with it and there's some sort of confirmation, that's one thing. But just to blind YOLO long into this, I have my concerns, because this little micro setup could end up getting invalidated, in which case we could just be going to retest support of the much larger range, right? It's still very possible that we end up getting something like that. So I don't want to completely just think that just because we got this, that we need to go bullish right away. I still see this as an unfinished bearish STUBER. Although, don't get me wrong, the first target was hit because we blasted through the 0.5 fib, which is the first target. But the fact that we haven't hit the 214 target yet makes me think that it's still very likely, at least a very good possibility of it happening. And in my opinion, that wouldn't even be anything crazy. It wouldn't even mean that if we hit those levels that, hey, now we're bearish, right? I know a lot of people would get bearish and start shorting into support, but typically speaking, support levels are buy levels. And that's exactly how I would be treating it. So even if I'm not looking at taking longs at those levels, if we end up getting down to those levels, I will be closing some of my short, right? Taking profits on a short is the same thing as buying. So treating it as a buy level, obviously. As far as the weekly chart, yeah, we had a little bit of a green candle close last night. Still haven't broken anything crazy. In fact, as I mentioned in last night's stream, or yesterday's stream, the fact that we ended up flipping this old support level into resistance absolutely perfectly on the little scam pump that we had last week. So if we can end up closing above that at this week, obviously a lot of time between now and then, but we very much so that would at least be a nice sign of strength. And at that point, I would be open to the possibility that we're going to go and retest the lower high on the weekly. You can actually see it here because I've had it mapped out for a little bit longer. But yeah, that's just another thing to be aware of, is that Bitcoin has so much work to do to actually go into a new bull market, to go parabolic. Even if this little bear market that we've experienced so far, and I am going to call it a bear market because I mean Bitcoin's been cut in half, right? But typically speaking, if that is considered an actual bear market, I would expect it to take some serious time before breaking out into new all-time highs. So even if we were to do, let's say, something like this and actually break some of these levels, it's still very possible that we're just going to chop around in a much larger range, because really this is our confirmed bearish pivot at our all-time highs at approximately 126.5K. And until we actually break that level, there is nothing saying that this downtrend needs to be over, basically, right? So just something to be a little bit cautious of, that there is obviously very strong resistance levels if Bitcoin bulls are able to push the price significantly higher. So just something to be a little bit cautious of there. As well with the RSI. I mean, it is nice to see that the RSI has gone from oversold and we are now reclaiming this 30 level. So I like to see that, but just understand that could take a little while to play out. Can I end up basically just going to get rid of that for now? Just looking at the RSI, and just like what we saw at the end of last market cycle, the bottom of the last bear market, is that we did do that same thing where the RSI went oversold. And a lot of people claim that that has to be the bottom because it always is. But notice that we did end up still getting that FTX collapse where we did push a little bit lower, not much lower, but a little bit lower, and then printing a very nice bullish divergence on the RSI. And that's when we got our bottom. So that's something to watch out for this cycle as well. Not saying it has to play out the exact same, obviously, just something to watch for and be aware of, rather than just assuming just because the RSI is oversold that we need to go straight to the moon from here. That's not necessarily how it works. As I was saying with that short that I was talking about with Ethereum, the same setup actually, and I mentioned it in my Telegram, that I was actually looking at the Bitcoin chart first. The fact that the Bitcoin chart did end up losing this higher low on the trend, just because we had this high, we had a slightly higher high. Lowest point between the two is my confirmed higher low on the micro trend. We lost that. We come back up, retest resistance, and that STUBER did play out, right? You would have hit 3 of your laddered entries out of the 4. And from there, obviously, we have hit the 0.5 fib already. And so far, it seems like we're working our way towards the 214 target. I wanted to take that trade. However, I went with Ethereum instead, just because I already had those 2 other very nice Bitcoin shorts running. So at that point, I was just looking at taking a stab at something else. I've already got these 2 running. But yeah, that trade setup, unfortunately, it did play out for Bitcoin. It did not play out for Ethereum. But yeah, like I said earlier, already starting to see some signs of weakness. Just the fact that Bitcoin did lose its micro 5-minute trend. Although technically this wick is slightly higher, it is looking like a swing fail. You know, we got rejected below the 115. And I mean, we're going to have to see what happens from here. Obviously, that little range has basically played out already. But yeah, that is the first sign of weakness that I've kind of seen today, because we never really had that before, right? I mean, if we look at previous structure here, basically, let's say here, for example, we had this high, we had a higher high, confirmed higher low. I don't know if this actually would have been a STUBER. No, not quite. It would have got front run, but that structure is there, right? We never ended up losing that higher low on the trend. Just like even back here, this one would have played out as a Stuber, but we had that high, we had that higher high, we have our confirmed higher low. And although we went slightly lower, we did not invalidate that. I mean, we got right to the 115, but I always leave a little extra wiggle room. And I never took that position. I want to be perfectly clear, just showing this as a demonstration of market structure and basically how this trend has acted throughout the day, just setting higher highs, confirming higher lows the entire way, basically. And this is the first time that we're seeing that change. So it's just a little sign of weakness there. If I bring up the Oracle Pro indicator as well, let's take a look at what it's saying at the time. So we are still, I wouldn't say it's overly bearish at this time with this indicator. However, we did get this cross. This is just showing that there's a bit of a lack of momentum. The fact that, you know, here would have been our warning sign that we could be going to the upside, and absolutely that cross ended up being quite bullish. Whereas now we are starting to lose that momentum. Obviously, still possible that the price does get above the one that we've already lost, the reactor on the Oracle Pro indicator. But so far, it's just looking to me like we're losing a bit of momentum. So something worth considering that as well. Taking a look at the MDX retail long short indicator on the daily time frame, you guys, we can see that retail did once again start building shorts, right? We can see that that did end up climbing over the last day or so. And that's obviously retail had no interest in shorting at the highs. They waited until we got back down towards the lows of the range. And that's when retail traders decided to get FOMO for short positions and starting to FOMO into support and treating a buy level as a sell level instead, because that's how traders' emotions work. So from this point, the one thing that I could see basically giving us a sustainable rally is we need retail traders to continue building their shorts. It's kind of the opposite of what you read on social media. Everyone gets mad at people for being bearish. What you should celebrate is when people get extremely bearish, and especially when they're willing to put their money where their mouth is and start building those shorts. That's what we need to see a sustainable rally, right? Just like back here. I mean, look how long that retail longs have been fully, I mean, I'm going to say in control. I just mean the majority more than anything. But the entire time while retail was long heavy, the majority was long, that's when we were just printing this massive downtrend for the last 5 months or so. The times where we get these nice rallies are when we see retail traders being the basically the majority being short heavy. So if we can see that, if we see retail shorts become the majority again, and we had a little kiss here where it just about happened, it did cross, but it was very quickly reversed. It never had any staying power. But if we can get that cross and see retail shorts remaining the majority, that's where we can have our sustainable rally and talk about a bull market at that point. But currently, as it stands, every time we get any sort of rally, we just see Bitcoin retail traders get FOMO immediately when we start trading into resistance levels, right? Let's just look at resistance for the top of this little range here. As soon as we hit that level, you can see that retail started longing aggressively with FOMO. And that's just a perfect recipe for a rejection. So that's what happened, right? So that's kind of what I want to see. Obviously, we have no idea how that's going to play out, but that's the only way that I see any sort of sustainable rally for Bitcoin at this time. And guys, if you do appreciate my level-headed approach, just looking at the charts for what they are and trading the charts for what they are rather than what I hope appears there months down the road, do me a favor, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel if you haven't. If you are appreciating these market updates and you also like to trade the charts for what they are as an actual trader rather than a lottery ticket holder, again, yeah, if you hit that like button and subscribe, I truly appreciate it, my friends. Let me just catch up on the chat a little bit. Thank you so much for being here with me, my friends. So many familiar names in here. Love to see that so many of you guys join basically every stream. So love to see it. And obviously that means that you guys appreciate what I have to say. So I appreciate you guys being here with me. If BTC reclaims 72K before March 20th, the equinox cycle, a strong rally window opens. I have mixed feelings about that just because we still would not have broken the downtrend whatsoever on the 4-hour. That would be great to see. And maybe if you have some back-tested data based on that, sure, maybe it's a possibility. But just how I trade, I need to see the trend broken, basically, and this downtrend. Really, other than the odd one-off, I think there's been maybe once or twice that we have broken a lower high on the 4-hour trend very briefly and then continued lower. But generally speaking, over the last 5 months, we really haven't, maybe one or two times that we've broken a level like this. Other than that, every rally just like these, so many people celebrating the bottom was in during this whole month of sideways price action. And don't get me wrong, it's possible that the bottom's in, but by no means have we confirmed that in any sort of way. There is zero structure supporting that. We have not set a higher high on the 4-hour because, other than obviously with smaller ranges inside the range, yes. But the fact that we have that low, that lower low, that's our confirmed lower high on the trend. Until we break this lower high or we break this low, until one of those two things happens, we are still in the same range. We have been in this range since, well, February 6th. So over a month, we have been in this range. All of this is just noise. Great opportunities. Don't get me wrong. I don't want to discredit it. There's plenty of trade opportunities in those ranges, especially on the lower time frames. But as far as actual swing trading, I mean, we're right in the middle of a range right now, and we've just been in this range for over a month now. So, Stu, your gold call was spot on. Can you have a look at the 4-hour and 15-minute chart? That's interesting. Because I have not looked at gold since my call. I assume you're talking about the one I posted in the Telegram. I know I was talking about being at resistance. Yeah, there it is. And guys, I've had this mapped out for weeks. Even when I posted it in the Telegram on, I think that was Friday or something like that. Friday or Sunday. I can't remember which stream, but I ended up posting this chart in my Telegram. And yeah, I already had this mapped out from a previous stream weeks ago. And that's basically just looking at since right here, I have these white lines still on the chart and everything. This is where we broke our higher low on the trend. That gave us our confirmed bearish pivot. Here is where we broke our lower high, our micro lower high. Therefore, we have a confirmed bullish pivot, right? So much like what I was talking about with Bitcoin, until we break one of those levels, this is the range we're in. And if I'm looking for resistance, that means I'm going to be pulling a fib from the top of the range to the bottom. And there's my purple box. There's where we got rejected. And you can see that gold has actually ended up hitting the 0.5 fib already. So will we end up hitting the 214 as well? I don't know. That would just be the next target if you got yourself into a short there. I myself, I don't even trade gold, but looking at this, just how I look at typical market structure, basically. I will take a look at the 15-minute as well. You can see that we actually, this wasn't even an actual STUBER fib on the 15, although it was obviously a nice support level, the 786,886. But that bounce has technically already played out because we've got very close to the 214 fib already. So as far as new setups, I don't really want to pull a new fib from here or anything because we haven't actually broken the main structure. That's my concern on the 15-minute. But also this wasn't a lower low either, so I don't really want to pull a bearish fib here. So as far as the 15-minute goes, honestly, I don't really have a strong opinion. The way I see it, we are just kind of in the middle of the bigger range at this point. One thing that I would look for, actually, this might show up on the 15, would basically be, where did our 15-minute downtrend start? This would be my confirmed bearish pivot, just because, once again, we had a high, higher high, confirmed higher low. Obviously, we end up dropping from there. Did this bearish STUBER actually play out? We basically got up. It was front run very slightly, but got very close to the 786 retest there before going lower. So if I pull a fib something like this, this would be at least my confirmed bearish pivot, basically. So the resistance level basically lines up with the bottom of the 4-hour resistance level, right? So if we get some sort of a bounce, just start to be a little cautious with gold. Starting at about 53.30, that's where I would see resistance starting to come back into the trend, basically. Other than that, looking at the smaller trend, technically there was a bearish STUBER here on the 15 as well, but it's already played out, obviously. But we had a low, lower low, confirmed lower high. If we pull a fib from there, notice where we ended up getting rejected. A couple of times, actually, it's played out. But yeah, typical market structure there. So nice to see gold doing kind of the same thing that I expect Bitcoin to do. Just catching up on the chat here. Aloha, Stu. I understand DCA and entries to reduce potential percent of the stop loss. In my experience, this results in a great dollar loss. I remember you sharing your typical entry percents. Yeah, like on my Ethereum short that I took earlier, although unfortunately it ended up being a loss, I actually posted that, hey, I was laddering in 25%, 25%, 25%, 25%, and stop loss was just past the 115. That helps bring my average entry. So my loss, my Ethereum trade, it was a 25x short, and the loss ended up being about, well, it was close to 12%. Obviously not my whole account. Generally putting about 10% of my portfolio on a trade on that kind of a setup, and 12% loss is less than 1% of my portfolio. So, or sorry, 1.2% of my portfolio, basically. But yeah, that brought my average entry up to just between the 886 and the 1 fibs, basically. Anyways, guys, I think that's about all I really wanted to go over today. I do see a request to take a look at SUI. I will post a chart in the Telegram group as soon as I wrap up this stream. So those of you who are in my Telegram will get that in a few minutes here. But yeah, like I said, I think that's about all I really wanted to go over today. So if you appreciate these market updates, please do me a favor. Smash that thumbs up button, subscribe to the channel if you haven't. And just as a reminder, for those of you who are interested in seeing more of some of my entries, strategies, warnings, and so on, and you just want to see more examples of how I'm looking at market structure in general, do yourselves a favor, scan the QR code on the screen, and that will also get you access to free unlimited algo bot trading through Prime Automation. And as well, if the indicators that I use from Chart Prime interest you, like the Oracle Pro that I've been using a lot recently, if those indicators interest you, there is a link in the description down below with a discount code as well that will get you 35% off of those indicators as well. With that, I'm out. Stay safe, my friends. Thank you so much for watching once again. Peace out.